I am Marcus James Dixon with Gold Derby, and we would like to welcome Stephen Lambert to our TV reality panel, the executive producer of Squid Game, The Challenge on Netflix. So, Stephen, what is the hardest part about producing a show that has a whopping 456 players, each with their own personality, each with their own story? How do you do it?
Well, it's pretty difficult. Obviously, this was a show that had been a massive success as a scripted show on Netflix. They had the huge benefit of a script. We didn't have a script. So they knew who their hero was and they knew who was going to win. We had no idea who was going to last the next 5 minutes. So the challenge all the time was to try to concentrate on a group of people within our big group and to see what would happen to them and to tell their story. But of course, as soon as we started getting involved with our characters, very often they were then eliminated. So the challenge of this show was like passing the baton. How do you get the viewers to engage with a group of people and then move across as you lose those and you start to get closer towards that final group that will take you into the second half of the season? And I think that was the skill of the whole team. It was a very big team, a lot of executive producers, a lot of producers, and we were story people as well. And we were concentrating all the time and trying to see who those people were and trying to, I think one of the things that we did that I felt very passionate about was the quality of interviews that we had. We had two kinds of interviews. We had the conventional interviews, which were the interviews talking to people about what was happening in the game. But we also had interviews with people about who they were, their background, their motivations, their hopes. And these interviews gave us a way of kind of establishing people quite quickly so that when we then saw them in scenes, we were interested in them, even if they didn't last that long. And I think that was part of the secret. It was just a huge challenge in the edit to tell a story that meant that you cared about people, but then as you lost them, you moved across to others. It was a bit like Band of Brothers, for instance, where you bought into characters and then suddenly they were dead. Or even Game of Thrones. And we were doing this on a much bigger scale with so many people. But I think, judging by the audience reaction, people did care and they liked it. And in a way, one of the fresh things about it was the way in which you lost characters, but you gained an interest in new characters.
And you mentioned bigger scale. I mean, can we talk about the historic cash prize, $4.56 million? How easy or hard was it to convince Netflix to pay out that amount? That's a big amount of money.
Well, it wasn't very hard because it was Netflix's idea.
Okay.
We had no idea that Netflix was willing to put up that bigger prize money, but actually it was genius because, again, obviously we were making a show that was inspired closely by the scripted show. Now, in the scripted show, as we all know, the contestants, when they were eliminated, they died. We obviously weren't going to kill our contestants, but we needed the stakes to feel really big. And so the opportunity of winning this extraordinary life, generational changing sort of amount of money meant that when you were eliminated, you lost your dream, you lost that opportunity. And so I think in that sense, it gave the show something of the scale or the stakes, obviously not the same as dying as it has happened in the scripted show, but it meant it was very different to the conventional reality show that was up for where the prize would be big, but it's not on the scale of $4.5 million.
And the first game that the contestants played was red light, green light, just like in the drama series. Was there ever any doubt that that's the challenge you would start with?
No, we wanted to follow largely the games of the scripted show. And obviously red light, green light was a great one for dealing with so many people. And I think people expected that to be the case. I think what we were pleased with was that after that we went to Dalgona, again, the second show in the second game in the scripted shows, and it worked for us. But then we surprised everybody. They thought they were going to go into tug of war, but it was warships, and that was good to give them people, give viewers a surprise, give the viewers and also the contestants a surprise at that stage in the game. But yes, I think again, because we didn't have a script, and then if you think about the drama, the scripted show, the kind of moral complexity and the dilemmas that the characters faced all came from the script. We didn't have that, and our big games weren't ones that kind of were tests of character. They were more tests of sort of skill and quite a bit of luck. So we invented quite a lot of additional games, what we call tests. And those tests were tests of character. And they gave the opportunity for players to eliminate other players. They kind of built on alliances and then alliances being broken. And I think that was very important for us, because if we'd just relied on the big games, we wouldn't have had that thing that you need for all great reality shows, which is to bring out the kind of the moral complexity of the players and their values.
Honestly, I think my favorite game test, whatever you want to call it, is the allegiance test, where the one person picks someone and they're safe, and then that person picks someone else, kind of like in a domino effect. And if you're not picked, you're eliminated. It was so simple, but so dramatic.
Yes, it was very dramatic. And I can't remember now exactly how many, but there were quite a lot of people left at the end who were quite shocked that they hadn't been picked. And yeah, I mean, it's the daisy chain idea. It's like, well, I get picked and I've got to pick somebody else. And we love that. But of all the tests that we created, the one I liked most was Circle of Trust, which was towards the end of the season. We had a small group of people, and they at one point they were all blindfolded, and then one of them would take the blindfold off and they would put a coffin on a little small representation of a coffin on the desk of one of the other players. And then they would go back and put their blindfold on, and then everybody would take their blindfold off. And the person who had the coffin in front of them had to try to work out who had put it there. If they could guess correctly, then that person that put it there would be eliminated. If they didn't guess correctly, they were eliminated. Now, that was just a really interesting game. And I think we were all amazed that on three occasions, the people who had the coffin put on front of them were able to work out who had done it. And that was remarkable. In one case, one of our finalists, Phil, he did it twice, and we just couldn't believe it. So yeah, that was a game that I thought was really intriguing.
One of the moments that went viral this season was the man with the umbrella, player number 299. He had a complete breakdown cutting out his cookie, and the reactions online were insane. I'm curious, what was your reaction kind of watching this happen in real time?
Well, he's a good example of what I was talking about earlier, as somebody who was very open in his interview about his background. He talks about the fact that he comes from a large Mormon family and that his siblings used to tease him, and he talked about how gullible he was. And we see him in the scene where he is kind of talked into accepting the umbrella on behalf of himself, but also the whole of his line. And we've seen before that two lots of four people going, and they couldn't agree within 2 minutes as to who should have which shape, and so they all get eliminated. So the tension is really building on this next group of four. And Spencer 299, he capitulates, he accepts. I mean, one of the other players says, I will help you if I can. And this seems to be enough for him to accept it. And I think the minute he realizes that, well, he then discovers that that's not going to be possible. And I think he realizes that he has been too gullible. And he seems to be doing quite well breaking out the umbrella shape, but at the last minute he fails. And I think the tension on him was a lot. I mean, afterwards he felt, obviously quite emotional about it. But then we did filming with him later on, and he was fine about it. But I mean, yes, it was very dramatic, and the ways in which our players responded to the tension of trying to make those shapes, get those shapes out, and then it going wrong, was not just in his case, but in many other cases, was really very dramatic.
Mm. Well, it's such a great show, Steve, and I loved every single second of it. I'm happy with the winner, Mai. She was my favorite once it got toward the end. She's the one I was definitely rooting for. I wonder if before we go, is there anything you can tell us about a second season, or are you completely sworn to secrecy?
I'm definitely sworn to secrecy about any of the details. As you know, we're making a second season, which we're excited about. And we are talking to Netflix about the games that will be in the second scripted season. So
Mm.
that will influence what we will put in our second season. But you know, we're really excited that within 28 days, 250 million hours of viewing. It was #1 show on Netflix all around the world for several weeks. And it was just an extraordinary response. And so we're so delighted that we've got the opportunity to do it again.
I can't wait to see it. Thank you so much for chatting with us.